This is how the government is making you poor, by this stupid, silly game they make us all play. Stay tuned to find out exactly what I mean. Promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Property. So glad you could join me here today. See, the government is making you poor and all of us poor by this crazy, crappy topic I'm going to have to talk about to you today, which is totally true. Now, this isn't meant to be like a political take on what's happening in the economy right now, but it's exactly what is happening because you need to understand as to how to, combat this silly game they're making us play. See, I'm gonna talk to you about this topic using normal English and stories instead of fancy economic terms, that people throw around like inflation, macroeconomics, and all that stuff, right? Because right now, every time I mention the word inflation, I know some people's eyeballs just like roll back. So when I was younger and I worked my first job saving for tuition at the University of Waterloo, I was in this kitchen of a bubble tea shop, deep frying food, so like snacks for bubble tea. It was this like super small claustrophobic kitchen that was probably like, I don't know, like half the size of like my set here right now. It was really, really small. They paid me $7 an hour in cash. It was a Chinese place. And I recall minimum wage back then was around like $10 or so. So I was super stoked about getting my first job and having money that I actually earned myself. That meant I didn't have to ask for an allowance and I could start saving for my tuition. So having my first job meant I knew exactly how much I made per hour in my mind, what my time is worth, 10 years ago, right? So whenever I started going out with my friends or buying things, I knew exactly how many hours I had to put into the bubble tea kitchen to get what I wanted. So when I bought a Subway footlong for lunch, it was like $5 plus tax back then. That would have been almost an hour of my life in the kitchen. When I went out for dinner with friends, call it $20 or so back in the day, it would have cost me 3 hours of my life. When I want to buy a pair of pants, call it $50 or so, that would have been 7 hours of my life, right? You kind of get the point, right? I knew exactly how many hours I had to work at the bubble tea shop just to get what I wanted. So I measured my life in how many hours I would have to be in the kitchen at the bubble tea shop, right? Because I knew my time was worth $7 an hour. Now, imagine when I saved $7,000 or what's the equivalent of 1,000 hours, which is the same as 41 days working straight, no sleep, and I just saved it. What is it worth now? That $7,000 is a representation of my time more than a decade ago. So when the government prints money, right, like they make more of it, it makes the money I spent, that I earned, I spent time on, worth less. Meaning that 1,000 hours of my life, defined as $7,000, right, is now no longer worth $7,000, even though I was told to be smart and save my money. This is exactly what's happening right now. It's a silly game the government's making us play. When the government prints money, it's automatically devaluing the time that you spent earning it. It's downright disrespectful and almost stealing. Remember, the definition of printing money is literally like adding zeros behind a computer and making the amount of money like in the system higher. So when there's a higher amount of money chasing the same, call it widget, call it lumber or toilet paper, these widgets over here get more expensive. That means in addition to the hours I spent making that $7,000, the 1,000 hours of my life, I would have to spend more time of my life just to make that $7,000 here, buy $7,000 worth of stuff. Because these widgets over here have gotten more expensive by the government increasing the amount of money that's in the system, right? This is what's happening in the world right now. This is a form of inflation caused by the government because they have to print money to service their debt. It's happening at like such a rapid rate, even if you want to ignore it, you really can't anymore. Normally, we're supposed to have 2% inflation a year, which in my mind is still a lot, but most people don't care, and they also don't get income increase to match that 2% inflation, right? However, it's happening a lot faster right now despite what's being reported. So by the rule of 72, which is just like a fancy form for saying how long it takes for you to double your money or half your money, it means that if inflation is at 2% right now, so you take 72 divided by 2, which is equal to 36, that means that's how long it's going to take, 36 years, for my $7,000 to be worth half as much. But let's just say inflation is not 2% now, when it's like 6%. That means your money is going to get halved, 72 divided by 6, in 12 years. That means if you have a child right now, by the time they make it to university, tuition could be twice as expensive, which is literally what we saw in the last decade. You see, I'm sharing all of this in normal English for you to understand because you need to understand what the heck is happening right now. The money game the government is forcing us all to play because of this giant debt spiral that they put us into is making you poor, unfortunately, making us all poor, unfortunately. Financial literacy is of the utmost importance right now. You can't ignore what's happening anymore because you need to understand how to navigate this silly money game the government's making us all play. We either play the game or over time, without knowing it, we become poor. And the government will just continue doing this because they have to print the money. One of the ways I've beat this silly game is that the government's made us play to buy investment real estate. Real estate values have kind of aligned with the amount of money that's being printed in the last 10 years in Toronto specifically. So here's a quick chart I think I put together last podcast, and you can see here that the percentage of money that was added to the system is roughly the amount of appreciation that's the same in real estate, right? And I've been saying this for the last month or so. Are real estate prices going up or is your value of money going down? This is what we call a hedge in the money game, right? It limits my risk of having my money and more importantly, my time be devalued by putting it into something that goes with the same price. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other reasons as to why I invest in real estate, right? But anyways, you know that if you're watching this channel. So if you want to learn more about how I beat the money game in today's world, you can book a call using the link on the screen, which will be right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. And hopefully you found this video helpful and really kind of like opens your eyes to what type of shenanigans the government is making us go through right now and probably for the next decade or two. Nobody wants to discover that we're broke in the next 10 years and why it happens, because when what happens in 10, 20 years, it's too late. The government's made us poor already. So you need to have financial literacy right now to beat the system, to beat the game the government is making us play right now. So hopefully this is helpful. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.